Welcome back to another You-Centered podcast. Rick Gorman from the YC here, and this is part 5 of our 6-part Savage Leadership series. And today I'm lucky enough to have old friend Rich Napolitano, who's going to be speaking to us today from his great work he's doing over at the Greater Lawrence Family Health Center. So, Rich, welcome to the You-Centered podcast.
Hey, Rick, thanks for having me. Really appreciate being here.
Awesome. All right, Rich, as you know, and most of our listeners know, we don't like to do a bulleted bio. We want the person to actually talk a little bit about themselves. So, for the people in North Andover that may not know Rich, who is Rich Napolitano and what makes him tick?
Well, I grew up in the Merrimack Valley, born in Boston, but my folks moved up to the Merrimack Valley. I grew up in Andover, graduated from Andover High School. Went off to St. Michael's College up in Vermont and got my undergrad and my master's degree up there. Loved it up there. Thought I was going to have a career in student affairs and worked in student affairs for a while. Went to Siena College in New York as an assistant dean of students. Really enjoyed that and eventually fell into foundation work, working for a large nonprofit in Albany, New York, serving the disabled. So since then, for the better part of the last almost 30 years, I've worked in nonprofit work, mostly in advancement and fundraising, philanthropy type roles, in education, social services, and healthcare. For the last 8 years, I've been at the Greater Lawrence Family Health Center, locally here, and based in the Lawrence community. Our corporate offices are in Methuen. And there I'm the Senior Vice President and Chief Strategy Officer.
And all leaders actually have a personal life. So how about a little shout out to your amazing family?
Yeah, I have. I'm married to a wonderful wife, Eva. We've been married for a little over 10 years now. She's fantastic. Between us, we have 4 children, aged 28 to 20, 3 boys and a girl. And we currently live in Methuen. As I mentioned, I work at the health center, and Eva works for the Home Health Foundation.
Yeah, we'll get into that a little bit later because Eva is definitely the brains of this outfit. We'll talk about that in a second. Rich, we ask all of the guests our first question. A lot of the questions will be geared directly to you, but all of our 6 guests are going to be asked certain questions. And the first one is, how would you describe Rich Napolitano's leadership style?
So my leadership style is definitely one that's team-focused, collaborative leadership style, trying to involve as many people as possible in the team environment. I think that's important. I think leaders of teams need to include as many folks as possible on their team. Not look, they got to treat the old saying, you treat the janitor just like you would treat the CEO and the C-level person, C-suite folks. So I would say my management style, just in one word, would be collaborative.
Okay. And all leaders have some kind of values that they live by. What would you describe your leadership values as?
I would say passion for the mission, passion for what you're working for or working towards. I would say loyalty to your team, loyalty to your family, loyalty to yourself. And I think self-awareness too. I think that's important of any leader to have some self-awareness.
Really good. Now, you've had a number of stops. I didn't know you when you were out in New York and obviously working at Siena, but I got to know you when you were back here, Lawrence Academy, and other different sites all the way up into the Greater Lawrence Family Health Center. How would you say that each stop in your professional career has made you the leader you are today?
I think every place that people work, you always have the opportunity you got to take advantage of the learning opportunities, right? So like I said, I spent a lot of my career in fundraising. So there, in different industries, social services, healthcare, and education. But in all of them, they were all mission driven. So, you have to have a belief in the mission, and I think that's one thing that I learned along the way. In order to feel passionate, like I mentioned before, is a value of mine that I think is really important for leaders, is to have that passion. I think you need to, focus on that in terms of your leadership. And I learned that along the way. And each stop, you realize, okay, how much of this is really is resonating with me and everything that I do. So over time, raising money and for different mission-driven organizations was always something that I did, and it was a job. Now, in the work that I do now with the health center, I enjoy going to work every day, and it's taken me a while and throughout my career to get to the point where you really enjoy being at work every day with the people that you work with, the people, whether it be on your team or whether it be your colleagues, and then also with the patients and the customers that you're working for. So that's really how it's kind of transformed for me over the years.
Yeah, and I live by a quote that if you find a job you love, you never work a day in your life. And
right.
When I look at you at the Greater Lawrence Family Health Center now, and I'm not saying you're going to stay there forever, but over these last 8 years, I've seen you transform into, to be honest with you, I actually think of you as even happier in your professional career now.
Yeah, there's
than
no
maybe,
doubt.
and maybe some of your early years, which I know that was rough at times. So I like to ask our guests, and not everybody has to have a mentor. I think people have mentors and maybe not even knowing they were mentors, but who were maybe Rich Napolitano's mentors when you were either growing up or even in the first careers in your professional life?
I would definitely, it for me, when I first think of mentors, when I think about this question, because I've gotten it a lot, I think of my grandfather and I think of my parents. My grandfather was the youngest of 10. My great-grandparents came over from Italy, and he was a longshoreman and up in Maine, at the old port, what they call the old Portland. And he basically, he had to provide for his family of five children. And my grandmother, he had such a hard work ethic. And then I worshiped the guy because he was an official, like I am. He was a baseball umpire, very accomplished baseball umpire. He was a basketball official, football official. So, for him, that's where I kind of got the bug to do that. And I know, I'm sure we'll talk about that at some point. And then I would say my parents. And I think for my parents, it was more about work ethic, but it was also how you treat people. If anything, I learned from both of my folks, but especially my mother too, is the importance of being kind and being tolerant of all different types of people, and realizing the differences between people and respecting that. So those were really my true mentors. Obviously, you're getting parented. For those of us that are fortunate to have two parents in our lives, I was very fortunate, and they helped shape me and my brother and sister for what we're all doing today. We're all working in nonprofit work, and neither of my parents did. My mother was a nurse. My father worked in downtown Boston as a business executive, but we all got that bug to work for mission-driven organizations, whether it be healthcare or education.
Absolutely. I've had being here as long as I've been here, I've gotten a chance to work for every town manager North Andover's ever had, and each one of them is very different. When you look at your professional career, what type of a leader did you really enjoy working for, and maybe the type of leader that you struggled with?
Yeah. The first part, the second part of the question is easiest. The micromanaging type of leader who is doesn't really give you the autonomy to do your job. Those have been the toughest for me. They could be experts in the field. They could be very excellent at what they do. They've had those experiences, but not to help someone learn and grow has always been difficult for me. The leaders or mentors that I have worked for and worked with, it was more of those collaborative type of leaders that wanted to bring you along, wanted to help you grow, and expected the same thing from you with your team and the people that reported to you. Those are the people that I've worked best for.
Yeah. And who did you talked about the micromanagers and things like that. When you look at yourself now, and supervising a lot of different people. Do you think back at some times of how you were maybe led, and is it really consciously on how you lead now?
Yeah, I would say so, definitely. I catch myself when I'm talking to people on my team or my number two in the office, and then I'll stop myself and I'll say, you know what, this is your decision. You take this and you run with it. If you need me, you let me know. But that's why you're here. And I think that you always got to be learning. So I try to remember back on what I learned and that worked and what didn't work.
I have had the pleasure of getting to know you outside of your nonprofit work, and you have a leadership role in another part of your life. You're a basketball official, a longtime basketball official, also a longtime basketball assigner. And we had a great visit yesterday from one of the best to ever play in the barn. Tyler Nelson was here yesterday. He actually presented us with his jersey from playing overseas in Germany this year. And one of the questions he asked is, "Hey, how's Rich doing?" And how has maybe your career in officiating and assigning helped you in terms of being a leader?
The officiating part is just I'm so grateful that I took it up and started doing it. I started doing it when I was in high school. I was never good enough for Will Hickson and Tommy Rise's basketball teams at Andover High, so I started officiating. We had like I said earlier, we had the bug in the family from my grandfather, and I never knew. I thought it was just something to make some extra money, but that was 1982. So 38 years later, I'm still officiating basketball, college basketball, high school basketball. And it's just what it's taught me is, management skills, communication skills with all different types of people, whether it be kids, parents, other referees, coaches, scorekeepers, all those things. And it's really, helped me kind of mold my communication style with people. And, the game management skills. I mean, one of the things that if you were to talk to my supervisor, one of the reasons why I think he likes putting me in games is because of my ability to manage a game and to make sure that, we don't hit any, as we call them, break into jail or jackpots in the game. Very few of those happen, in games that I've worked. And, those are the things that, that I've taken from it. As far as being an assigner, the reason I enjoy that much so much and would like to continue to do it in the future as I maybe will step away from refereeing, and then, I don't know when I'll do that, but is to help other people learn the craft and grow in the business. I think you got to give back.
Yeah, and we're excited because people around North Andover know about our famous North Andover Fall Ball League, which had to be put on hold last year due to the pandemic, but we're planning on being back this fall for one of the best fall varsity leagues in New England, and Richie is our assigner, so we'll be seeing Richie and his stable of referees back in the next couple of months. Describe maybe the toughest decision you made, and or even just what guides you in making tough decisions.
I think what guides me in making tough, I was asked this in an interview recently, what drives you crazy? And as a leader, and for me, it's indecisiveness. I think leaders have to step up and be ready to make the tough decision. We've had to make, all of us as leaders have to make a lot of tough decisions. For me, I just expect people to not make hasty decisions, but make informed decisions. But don't belabor it. Don't put off something that you need to make a decision about. And I think those are the thing. That's the thing that drives me crazy about leadership and decision making. Is sometimes you want to have that collaborative style, but by the same token, you got to make tough decisions. And for me, for instance, in the most recent time, it's been whether or not someone on our team, is a fit or not, and, whether you need to just kind of pull back, fish or cut bait on something or somebody, because it's not the right fit, so those are always tough decisions, and, hopefully they're few and far between, but they are tough decisions.
No, without a doubt. All right, let's get into GLFHC. So when, Joe Biden became president, and there was really going to be a plan to distribute the vaccine. Your organization became one of the organizations throughout the country that was going to be distributing this and being this is a huge undertaking, and I think most people know that. How are we going to get people vaccinated? What was the best way to do it? And there was so much leadership from your organization, and I know it wasn't just you, but you were a major part of that. What type of leadership went into just getting the whole thing ready to roll out?
Yeah, its ability to put together a team, the ability to trust and respect each other and what we all bring to the table. I work with three or four colleagues that make sure that this thing logistically runs every day. We meet every afternoon, sometime between 4 and 6 o'clock. We spend a half an hour to 45 minutes talking about what happened during the day and what we have to get planned for the next day to the next 2 weeks. And we do that every day, Monday through Friday. These four folks, there's no way that GLFHC could have done this with just one or two people. We have vaccinated to date. We have provided over almost 75,000 individual vaccinations. We've vaccinated close to 44,000 people with at least one dose. We're pretty proud of that, and there's a reason why the Biden administration and Health and Human Services at the federal level has chose community health centers to be really at the front of the vaccine distribution, and we were one of the first 200 in the country to be identified. There's about 1,500 community health center organizations, and we were one of the first 200 to be identified and one of the first in mass. And there's a reason for that, and we're at the ground level, we're at the grassroots level with our not only our patients but the community. And we have 4 consistently run vaccine clinic sites right now, 3 of them Monday through Saturday. And the other one is at the Northern Essex campus in Lawrence, and that seems to be going as well as also. But what we're finding now is that in order to pull this off, we've had to now bring the vaccine out to people. Yeah. So there were I talked about this last week, and with local folks, the Tribune, they were looking for to get answers on where we're going with this, and we need to go out to the people to get more people vaccinated, because there's a number of people that might not otherwise, either they won't seek it out themselves, or they're having trouble accessing the Commonwealth's online system. Right. So we're bringing it to them. New Balance we've done. We're going to be working with area schools and setting up special days for them, because the age eligibility has broadened quite a bit, especially with Pfizer. So I could talk about the vaccine thing all day, but the people I work with that are doing this every day with us and for us, they're just amazing.
So let me talk a little bit about, because I actually saw it up front. So I get a phone call from my town manager, Melissa Rodriguez, who was a previous guest on this Savage Leadership Series, along with Christina Minicucci, another previous guest that we've had, in her role as a state representative, to try to bring together your organization, my facility, the North Andover Housing Authority. The goal was to try to vaccinate all of the people in the North Andover Housing Authority. And we did it two days, one day in February, one day in March, 3 weeks apart, 4 weeks apart, whatever it was. But it was a phenomenal rollout. Everybody was involved with it, from the town perspective, the Housing Authority. Your organization came in. We had a couple of Zoom meetings, we had a couple of walkthroughs, but I was so impressed with the professionalism of how this was carried out. And I tell people to this day, the faces of a lot of the senior citizens after they got their second shot, everything from few of the senior citizens dancing out the door to people crying, feeling like it was Christmas Day. It was an amazing community collaboration by everybody. Well, I was happy to be, our facility. I didn't do anything except greet people and have our facility. But the group of people you brought in, everybody from your site coordinator all the way to the nurses, to the people that were setting up and taking down, great group of guys I got to know pretty well. It's amazing what you guys have done. And like you said right now, the next thing is going to be, how to go out to the people. And you've done that because you've worked very closely with my sons a nonprofit, the Movement Family, where the GLFHC has been involved with everything from flu shots with the homeless to vaccinating them. And it's amazing what you guys are doing. So kudos to everybody at your organization. Make sure they know that what we think about them over here, and brighter days are coming. I kid you a lot. When I see you on social media or in the newspaper, I usually text you. And you actually represent GLFHC at a number of conferences, whether it's in Washington, D.C., whether it's in Boston, whether it's locally. What is your leadership style when you have to represent your organization to the public, press conferences, interviews, that type of thing?
Yeah, so when I got to GLFHC, as I mentioned earlier, I grew up in the area. I never knew anything about GLFHC. I never knew about the health center and whether or not that it even existed. I was looking for a job. I ended up in this role back in 2000, right at the beginning, January of 2014. And one of my charges, the expectations for me was, how do we raise the brand? How do we raise the profile of the health center? So not only our image, our brand in the community as a healthcare leader, but also philanthropically too. So those were the two things that I had to focus on right out of the gate. Ever since I've been at the health center, it's always been in the back of my mind to make sure that whenever I'm talking about the health center, about our staff, about our patients, about our mission, it's always been about the health center and raising that brand, raising that profile. Now, there could be a PR thing where we're talking we're asked for a quote from the Tribune or the Globe, or it could be presenting at national conferences. But we've become, and it's because of my colleagues, and it's because of our re-emphasis on this over the last 8 to 10 years, is that we're focused. We want to be considered a national leader. We want to be considered an employer of choice in the area, which I believe that we have become. We're always trying to compete with folks, making sure we retain staff and we retain good staff. Focus on our workforce and employee engagement is important. So when I'm talking to groups, or I'm talking to, whether it be the press, or I'm making sure that we have the right person or a medical professional talking to the press, it's always with that in mind, of raising our brand.
Yeah. So you'll see Rich on. He's got a lot of FaceTime. I always tease him about that, but he does a great job with the GLHC brand, which is very important. How are you continuing? You're a little younger than me, not much. How do you continue to grow in the area of leadership as a guy in his 50s now?
I try to read as much as I can. I mean, I probably don't read as many books from front to end as I'd like to. I usually do that in my off time or vacation time on the beach or something like that. But, I try to, watch different videos, talk to people, learn from others in the business and the community health center movement, as we call it. And I've identified some people that, whether it be my current boss and my colleagues, who I always learn from every day, and I'd like to think I do the same thing for them, or it's people that work in the business, either nationally or locally, statewide. That's I think you got to be learning to be a good leader. I think you got to be not afraid or not admit that there isn't always something to learn. And I think if you're really focused on becoming a better leader, you're always trying to learn, and you're always focused on something like that for yourself.
Well said. I stand by, if you stop learning, you stop growing, and I think that's just really true. If I had to put in the room right now, I don't know, 6 former employees of you through the years, the young Rich, the Rich in his 40s, the Rich in the 50s, what would they say about your leadership?
I think that they would say, it's funny, I've been discussing some of this with two former colleagues of mine that worked on my team when I was working at a job in Boston back 15, 16 years ago. It's more, I think they would say he was always supportive, always kind, and kind of always looked out for us. I'm very, I've been, at times I can be very protective of my team, which I think is important. Sometimes that might be to a fault or be overprotective, but for the most part, I think that's what people would say. they would say, a strong leader in terms of mentoring and bringing us to a place of growth. Two of the individuals I think about were, when I was running a fundraising shop in Boston, and they both have, over the last 10 years, one of them, in fact, thought she was never going to be, I don't think she ever really aspired to be a true leader or a C-suite level fundraiser in the business. And now she's like an assistant dean at Boston University. I mean, she's in advancement, and she's done a great job. I mean, I'm friends with her on Facebook, and she literally was working on and talking about, writing $1 million proposal last night that she knows is going to be closed in the next week or so. That means a lot to me. That's important.
Sure, absolutely. Yeah. You have gone through, we talked a little bit about it's not just the work, the professional, there's always personal life stuff that goes in it. You went through a tough divorce as a young man, and Nicky Knapp's, one of our favorites, your son, battled leukemia. And those were tough times for you. How would you say those life changes maybe affected you when you were leading, and how it maybe changed how you lead?
Yeah, I mean, I think it changed me personally. I mean, those were tough times back, 2007 to 2012, 13, those 5 or 6 years, between going through a divorce with my kid's mom and then have Nikki get sick with cancer. It was tough, but I think it's made me what do they say? Tough times don't last, but tough people do. Yeah. And whether or not I consider myself a tough person, it certainly helped me realize really what was important in life. It's not all about money. It's not all about it's about happiness is what it's about. It's about happiness, and it took me a while to realize that as I went through that process. But when my son got sick, it made me realize even more the importance of family. Family is really, the saying with the young kids now is what the FOE, family over everything. Mm-hmm. My son has T-shirts like what that says that, and and I'm glad he does. I'm glad I've tried to instill that in him, in all my kids. My 3 kids and my stepson, and that's how I think it changed me. Not that family wasn't important for me before, but it's certainly now it's at the forefront of everything I do. And I tell my staff and my team that that's an expectation of mine, of them, and I think people are relieved when they hear that, and I didn't always get that growing up in my career, but I think it's important, so I think that's one thing the biggest thing that I brought out of that.
And the great news is Nicky's doing great, finishing up his second year at Keene State College, and doing really well. So let me talk to you about a word that you've used a few times. What does servant leadership mean to you?
Servant leadership is, for me, is you're working on behalf of the of the greater good. What are you doing to improve the life of others? And I think that going to work every day at Greater Lawrence Family Health Center gives me and my colleagues that opportunity. The focus of the mission is providing high quality health care to the underserved. That's what the Community Health Center movement was founded on. And I really believe that. I think, healthcare is a human right, not a privilege. Mm-hmm. And, I think we go to work every day, thinking and believing that. And I think that's important. And I expect the same thing from our team. That's what servant leadership for me means is, you're working on behalf of the greater good. You believe in the mission, and you know that what you're doing, you're serving the public. You're serving your patients.
Unbelievable. Good point. I'm going to give you a quote, and this was a quote I think of you. It's a quote from Rick Hendrick, who owns a lot of auto body stores and things. And the quote is simply, "None of us is as smart as all of us." What does that mean to you?
Right. None of us is smart as all of us. I'm certain I have a team that, there's a dozen of us or so on the team in 3 or 4 different important areas for the health center. But when we all come together, it's important that we all put our minds together on certain things, certain projects. Not one person is ever going to be as smart as the whole group would be together. And the whole group providing input, providing feedback. I think that's important. It's not, sometimes you're not going to reach consensus. We certainly like to do that. But at the end of the day, we all want to leave the room feeling good that we made the right decision or we're taking the right approach to something. And I think with that, that quote really speaks to that. Not one person is ever going to be as smart as collectively, if you think about it, everybody putting their heads together on something.
Absolutely.
So,
what would be something that your employees or even your peers through all these years may not know about you?
It's funny. My peers, it took a while. I know they do now, but I mean, it took a while for them because I didn't talk about it a lot. But we talked about my basketball officiating. They probably figured it out over time. I might talk about a game or something like this, but I don't think they realized what an important part or role it plays in my life. It's not so much the ball, the basketball itself, or it's the competition, it's the ability to communicate and the camaraderie with others as part of the game, the game management. It's really my kind of my sanity check, my release. Some people gamble, some people golf, some people hit the clubs, or whatever it might be. But or they play tennis. For me, it's officiating. We've known each other for a while too, and that some of us who really want to do it, we could officiate all year long, just that one sport, because it's such a big deal now. But so people, my peers and my colleagues realize how important it is in my life, and they respect that, which has been fantastic. I've been very fortunate that colleagues and supervisors, bosses have really given me that opportunity to still officiate basketball and keep it as an important part of my life. And you got to also have a supportive family too.
Right.
So I have the best partner in the world in Eva that supports everything I do, and especially with the basketball, because I could be working from 7 to 5 and then be gone to Waterville, Maine on a Wednesday night, and I get up early in the morning and I'm still back at work by 7:30. So it's just the way it is.
Sure.
So.
For sure. What accomplishment? You still have to write. Your story has still many chapters to go. But when you look at your life right now, what maybe has been your biggest accomplishment so far that has maybe given you the greatest satisfaction?
I would certainly say, a lot of people, a lot of fathers, a lot of parents would say certainly their kids. And that for me is probably my biggest accomplishment is my kids and what they're becoming and how they're managing their lives. But I would also say the current job that I'm in now, finding this job, being successful in this job, and happy to go to work every day is probably, professionally my biggest accomplishment. It's the best job I've ever had. I don't ever see myself at this point leaving the community health center movement. I really enjoy it. I'm not worried about what, going to the next position or what's going to happen. It's just, I'm happy to go to work every day, and for me, that's a huge accomplishment.
Yeah, for sure.
So
we're trying to build future leaders here at the youth center, and I think we do a pretty good job with that. But what would you say to maybe some of my kids that are going off to college or to the workforce, or even those kids that are graduating college as they head out to their first real professional work at this point? What advice do you say to them as future leaders?
I would say take advantage of all different viewpoints that you can possibly get. You always want to be learning. I mentioned learning in the past and before, but try to figure out what you're passionate about if you don't already know, and try different things. Take risks. When you're young and early in your career, that's the time to take chances and take risks. And I don't mean crazy things, but take calculated risks. Take the opportunity to try different things. Travel. Meet new people. Go out. If I had to do it all over again, I would have traveled by myself. I've seen and heard and talked to young people now that try doing that, and they meet new people and they do their own thing, and then they realize what they're really passionate about. And that's, that's what I would suggest people
Yeah,
do.
you know who's a perfect example of that is a young man that we know really well. Obviously, our good friend Pert Hamill passed away, but his son Lucas,
Yeah.
Lucas is exactly that way. Graduated Keene State, spent time in China. He spent time overseas. He came back here, did some stuff at Methuen High. I found out yesterday from the guys at the Boys and Girls Club that he's actually interviewing for a big job in the Boys and Girls Club system in Colorado.
Mhm.
He's always got to be a guy that's probably going to be out of this area. But
Yeah.
his traveling, and he did it all by himself. I was always impressed with him. I think it's
Yeah.
truly found what he's passionate about.
I'm glad you brought him up actually, because I just love that kid to death. He is such a wonderful influence on my youngest son, Nicholas. Nicholas could be home, if it's for a week or 3 weeks or 4 weeks at Christmas time before he's got to go back with the team. And as you know, Nick works with the team. Lucas was a star player on the Keene State team. Lucas always makes time for Nicholas. Always makes time. Takes him to breakfast, takes him to lunch, and basically talks him up and tries to figure out what he's doing, where his head's at, and Lucas is in many ways for Nick is an extension of Bert.
Mm-hmm.
And as you know, Nicholas had a really strong relationship with Bert, and Bert had a huge impact on him. And to have Lucas still act in that same way is so important for Nicholas. So it really means a lot to me.
Yeah, it's tough for me. As you know, Bert's one of my mentors and was one of my closest friends, and still think about him every single day. But one thing, when I heard the story about Lucas yesterday, I know Bert's smiling down because Lucas, as well as his other two kids, are just phenomenal young people. All right, we're gonna wrap up with a couple of things. 2 more questions for you. So the first one is kind of like our 5. And I'm going to give you 5 leaders' name. And I gave you no prep on this. I want you to tell me what you think about when you first hear this name. So the first one, Elizabeth Warren.
Dynamic. Elizabeth, I know I've met and had been in meetings with Elizabeth Warren, and I know sometimes she can be very controversial for people, whether it be on either side of the aisle sometimes. But what I appreciate the most about Elizabeth Warren is how dynamic she is, but also the support and the loyalty that she has shown community health centers. In terms of the Senate, there might not be a stronger, for us at least, advocate for community health centers.
Yeah, no doubt on that. A famous name in the GE, General Electric, Jack Welch.
With Jack Welch, I would say superior leadership. Jack Welch, I try to read some of his stuff as much as I possibly can. Just a hugely respected leader. People didn't always agree with him, but they always knew where he stood.
Absolutely. How about Michelle Obama?
Michelle Obama is refreshing, brilliant. I appreciate Michelle Obama. It's no mistake that people know that I'm definitely a liberal Democrat, not too far left, but I really always have appreciated Michelle Obama and what she stands for. I respect her a great deal. So,
Bill Gates.
I would say Bill Gates, a visionary. What he did and what he's done with the Microsoft and the IT, the computer, age is just remarkable, really.
Well, sure.
And he's the other thing about Bill Gates is he's trying to, he's obviously, with his foundation and with his billions and billions, he's tried to change the world and make the world a better place, which I respect.
About that,
yeah.
For sure. Last one. It's going to be someone that a lot of people won't know, but I know you and I know this person real well, and you were close to this person. Larry McIntyre.
Oh, wow. Loyalty is really the first thing that comes to mind. One of the things you learn and you try to teach these younger officials coming up is the importance of loyalty to not only the avocation but to your partners on the floor. And Larry, you could be the worst referee in the world. You could be a real jerk on the floor, but he always expected when you worked a game, and he put you in that position to work a game that you were there as a team and as a unit when you went on the floor before the game, during the game, and after the game, and he always expected that. So with Larry, he preached loyalty, and he preached loyalty to the avocation of officiating, and he was one of the best. He was one of the best. He was an original Big East official, and he probably stopped younger than he needed to, but he did that though so he could continue to mentor young people and assign games. He was he opened up opportunities for me that I'll forever be grateful for. Having the opportunity to, as a kid that never really played high level competitive basketball but loved it so much, to be able to work multiple times in the Boston Garden is just something I'll never forget.
Yeah, I got to know Larry in his later years, and just a very, very nice man. We lost Larry a little over a year ago, I think.
Yep.
Yeah. But obviously, COVID related, and obviously had an impact on a lot of people like Richie in the officiating world, but just a really good guy. All right, last thing, Rich, and then we're going to let you head back to the GLFHC. We're going to give you the final word. You kind of gave some advice to our young leaders. What's the final word you want to say about leadership to the general population?
I think the leadership thing is to, for me, it's embrace leadership. Embrace the opportunities. If you want to be a leader, embrace it, learn from it, try different things, respect people, preach that to your team, the importance of family first, and then the job will come. I think that's important for any leader. And if you lead collaboratively, I don't think you can go wrong. Absolutely.
Well, Rich, I want to thank you coming on our Savage Leadership Series. This has been great. A lot of great takeaways for myself and for the listeners. So again, thanks for coming on the Youth-Centered Podcast.
Thanks for having me, Rick. It's been great.
We're going to wrap up our 6-part series next week with local landscaping legend, Chris Downer. I got to know Chris when I first started here. I was a young guy running this new youth center, and he was a 17-year-old kid along with his brother pushing their little lawnmowers around town. And over the last 35 plus years or so, Chris has built this along with his wife, Nicole, and their family, have built this into one of the biggest landscaping programs in the Merrimack Valley, and does a lot more than just cutting grass. It's going to be great to catch up with him on a lot of his leadership style, a lot of the things that he does running and growing his company, and I'm sure we'll chit-chat about his big North Andover basketball days also. So I want to again thank Rich, and I really appreciate everyone's continued support of the Youth-Centered Podcast. And after we finish with Chris, we'll get back to some of the new things around town that we've been talking about. So as we end every podcast, we always say too much passion is never enough passion.